some random comment just went across the bottom. It said, I think that vegan Cheetos just got banned. What the hell is that about? Anyway, so this is fashionably late, more than fashionably late. It's almost 1 a.m. I'm not actually assuming there's going to be a lot of people tuning into the live stream right now, but I'm Ray Reinhardt's at Chaos Astrology, and every zodiac season, we just went into Virgo. I offer just some volunteers through my Facebook and my social media to give me their birth information, and instead of kind of explaining like what the essence of Leo is and the personality and everything, I use this this opportunity to give real life examples, show comparison, how different characteristics can be attributed to different charts, different Leos in this case. And so this is more of an educational thing and giving back to those people who volunteered since it was just recently their birthday. And this is kind of just a free gift to them. I don't go into specifics or take any requests from the volunteers in particular. Just kind of wing it, and I haven't really, besides obviously my boyfriend back here, he's a Leo. He's kind of sleeping though, he's not going to interject as much, I'm sure. Besides me looking at his chart before, and there's one other person on here that I've had his chart before. I haven't actually looked or gone over anything in any of these charts, so I do it straight from the fly, and there's no rehearsal with this. So I don't take requests on if they want to know something in particular. It just kind of feeds off of what's going on the day that I do it, because transits currently are always important and influential. So at this point now, for today, it's the 31st of August, 2017, and it's officially Thursday, right? Yep, Thursday. And so the moon is in the 29th degree Sagittarius. We have 8 degrees for the sun in Virgo. We have Mercury still retrograde in Virgo, and this is at 6 degrees of Leo. We have Mars finishing up in Leo at 26 degrees. It'll go into Virgo next week. Then we have Jupiter in Libra still at 20 degrees, Saturn at 21 degrees of Sagittarius, Uranus at 28 degrees of Aries retrograde, and Neptune 12 degrees retrograde for Pisces, and then 17 degrees for Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. That will go direct next month as well. So at this moment in time, let's see, communication-wise in the 3rd house, we have Vesta, and in the opposition house, which is the house of beliefs and perceptions and in general, like my stigmas or the things that I've concluded education-wise, is Chiron and Neptune. And that might actually be why I was a bit hesitant to start doing this, because I feel that maybe my objectivity may be a little bit warped, especially with being Virgo season, really hypercritical most of the time. So anyway, other than that, it's Thursday, so Jupiter is in the 4th house in Libra, and it's in opposition with Uranus and Eris, and it's still squaring to Pluto, so we'll just see how this goes. What I gathered from that, Leos tend to have very inflated egos and a lot of pride. And one thing that if some of these volunteers or people that may be watching this have yet to learn about me, I'm very, very meticulous about picking out really harsh, undesirable details. So that being said, let's just go ahead and get right into this. So I have someone named Maya or Mia. These are just names that have sent to me over the internet, so I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce them. Then we have Eustace, which is my friend, and Cheryl, Toni, Chris, Sherrie, and then someone, obviously a fake name, but they're like Thyatira, Thyatira, and then I have my friend Jordan, and those are going to be the charts that we're going to use for examples right here. So we'll just start in order. I graph these for equal houses. Do differ when you're doing Placidius or equal houses. I'm just doing equal houses because it's more cut and dry. It's simple. It's simplified, and I'm not going to get into really mucky details with personality quirks because that would take too long, and that's not kind of the style in which, or at least the method I'm doing with these particular videos, doing like a one sweep kind of overview of people. So anyway, this individual was born on the 19th of August, 1994, so they're going to be in the Scorpio-Pluto generation. They're also going to be in the Neptune-Capricorn generation as well, and so they're a Capricorn rising. So Saturn would be their key planet, and it's in Pisces, retrograde in the third house, in opposition with Mercury. So they actually do have Mercury in Virgo as well, so definitely scattered mentality, and perhaps inability to the whole scattered mentality with the Virgo Mercury in a stellium with Chiron less would emphasize that this person likely has issue prioritizing information, or it would be something to do with just communication priorities, or being able to have some sort of consistent structure within their immediate environment. So that would just be emphasized even more. They have Neptune conjunct Uranus in the first house. So it's not near the ascendant, but the first house does represent the self. So that would be some sort of abnormal ideations or visions of who they are as a person. And that is, again, reinforced with Saturn being in Pisces. Pisces associated with Neptune, the ruler of that. So that has to do with a lot of elusiveness, fog, and uncertainty and the unknown. So, and Saturn's all about mortality and structure and parameters. So that would, again, that would be emphasized with that. This person definitely would likely need additional objective guidance. Not saying particularly from an astrologer or an astropsychologist, but somebody just like a life coach or your kind of coach that may help them kind of get a good idea of what they're good at, to help them progress a little bit more with their life purpose or career in general. They do have Venus and Juno in the 10th house. That's of career. So that's ruled by Libra. So they're likely to be involved in some sort of law or justice sort of things, or be a martyr of that sort of nature. Then we have a stellium with Jupiter, the midheaven, North Node, and Pluto, all Scorpio, in the 11th house of trauma. So that's a sociological thing as well. This person, they're not Plutonian, but they're definitely going to come off as such, or at least be drawn to certain vibes like that, which would explain why this person likely found my videos and saw some sort of similarities or interests with that as well. They do have opposition to the 11th house, Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, conjunct with their South Node and Pallas, which would mean that this person's naturally rebellious and likely challenging their self or their identity or their personality, challenges the status quo. And that would actually entail why they would seem plutonic, because their social or social networking persona would be demonstrated by the Pluto Scorpio, the North Node in Scorpio, the midheaven in Jupiter. So it's going to be their very plutonic or dark kind of ideations or perspective of the world that will be the thing that will challenge people and cause some sort of controversy. Sorry, and with their self. So then we'll move on to the next person here. We have Boo. I'm going to do equal houses here. Okay, so Boo is a Scorpio rising. He was born on the 14th of August, 1993, so he's quite similar, at least generation-wise, to the previous person. So the previous person was born on August 19th, 1994. So they're both going to be Pluto Scorpio generation, and they're also both going to have Neptune and Capricorn as well, and including that, they're going to have Uranus and Capricorn too. Fascinatingly enough, now that I look at this too, this person as well as who has Neptune conjunct Uranus. The only difference is that Boo has it in his second house, and this person has it in their first house. Interesting. So a lot of the sporadic luck or fortune, specifically that Boo seems to have, or whatever happens to him, like with resources or his job opportunities, his prospects are really off the wall, and you would have never expected it. And that could go either way, good or bad, because Uranus is usually associated with malefic, but also something radical or abnormal could be the remedy to something that's catastrophic or toxic. So depending on the scenario that would be challenged would depend on if Uranus would be more of a catalyst to change something for the better or be some sort of sabotagism. So again, with Neptune being conjunct with that means it's just over exaggerated. So the emphasis between Boo or Eustace and the person before Maya is that they'll have this manifestation as the self for the person who has it in the first house, and for the second house, it'll be relationships and resources in particular that will be the things that will be unpredictable and off the wall. Him being a Scorpio rising means that Pluto is his key planet. That makes him a Plutonian, although he is a Leo. So Pluto is his main planet, and it's in the 12th house. That represents a couple things. That his psyche or his psychological or mental perspective will likely be elusive to him throughout crucial times in his life. It would also imply that his mentality or his beliefs or him potentially using plutonic kind of persuasions or abilities either for himself or for other people or against other people or even against himself, because that's the self-undoing house, will be elusive to not only him but elusive to other people. So he definitely would be somebody who take advantage of psychological manipulation without people actually realizing he can do such things. To have a T-square to Saturn Pallas. Saturn is in the third house near his IC, and he has it in Aquarius. So that reemphasizes that since Pluto's in the self-undoing house and it's naturally a toxic sort of association with that planet, and if Scorpio just kind of intensifies that, that the lack of knowing his intense potential with psychological manipulation or self-sabotaging himself, psyching himself out, is to be emotionally traumatizing or traumatizing in general to the immediate environment in which he is associated with. So the third house also has to do with mentality as well. So the way that he actually perceives information, takes things in, would likely be something really eccentric, abnormal, or potentially traumatizing, which might encourage him to keep things to himself. So he has Juno, Vulcan, Hygeia, and Chiron, and the Sun still in a stellium in opposition with those two things. Having Pallas in the fourth house on the opposite of the IC next to Sun would emphasize that he does cause either chaos or some sort of something to do with that psychological or that subconscious toxicity, does cause some sort of chaos or instability within his home life at times. So with Juno being on the opposite side of that, once he becomes aware of the intense abilities or gifts that Pluto and Scorpio in the 12th house gives, then he would be able to utilize and project that in a constructive way rather than letting it completely just engulf the third and the fourth house and affect his immediate environment in his home. He also does have Lilith in the fifth house, just like the previous chart had as well. So that would be Black Moon Lilith is associated with the Lilith mythology, someone looking at them like they're condemned or condemnation, or that there's something wrong with them, or not accepting them for who they are. And I would assume that similar associated things, the Neptune conjunct Uranus, would have something to do with that, regardless if it's in the first or the second house, because the second house does have a lot to do with relations and how they would relate to other people as well. There being a trine to that Neptune to Uranus, that's the previous person's chart, and then to Stacy doesn't have, or Eustace doesn't have that. He does have a trine as North Node in the first house to Lilith. So it wouldn't translate the same more or less, but there is obviously an association between condemnation of self-expression with Lilith both being in the fifth house. So for that Maya person, they have it in Taurus, and for Eustace, he has it in Aries. So it is a bit different. Um, the Taurus Black Moon would be a bit more subtle, despite the fact it's in a stellium with Pallas in that house. And so then let's go on to. Do I feel like I touched hard enough, Boo? Yours?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Let's go on to Cheryl. This is my third chart. The birth information is August 7th, 1985. And so this person is going to be in the Pluto Scorpio generation, just at the very beginning of it. And they're also going to share some generational planets with mine. So they have a Leo rising, meaning that the sun is the key planet for them. They have a stellium with the trans-Pluto, Mercury, Mars, Vulcan, all in Leo. And the sun is actually in the 12th house on the ascendant. So the theme here that we're going with the 12th house, any planets that are in the 12th house are going to be something of a stumbling block for the individual. And hi, darker Lilia? Hi, I can see you. I'm sorry. I was too into this. How's it going? I'm discussing Leo charts today because it was just Leo season, and I have some volunteers kind of just going through all the charts and reading them off. Fit? What? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I have a dress on and a tank top, and that's it. Yeah. But yeah, I'm talking astrology charts right now. But anyway, so I'm gonna keep going on. So anyway, when you have any planets in the 12th house, that's something that is elusive to the collective, or definitely elusive to the self, because the 8th house is the house of secrets. The 12th house is also secrets. The difference is the 8th house is associated with self secrets. The 12th house is associated with collective secrets. So this is something that, if you're the last to know, that would be something associated with the 12th house. Having the sun in the 12th house pretty much translates to someone not being aware of who they are or feeling comfortable expressing themselves or being confused with their own identity. Them having Mars in that house would coincide with that as well. If you don't know who you are and what you want to be and where you're going, it's really hard to feel motivated to do something. So that just ties into that as well. They do have Ceres in this 12th house too, even though it's in Cancer, which emphasizes that since this person is Pluto, since this person is essentially, as far as I know, Plutonic. Well, I mean, there is a stellium with Saturn, the South Node, Vesta, and Pluto in Scorpio that debates on if there's a cluster of planets in Scorpio, if that constitutes a Plutonian. Just from my interactions with Cheryl, I do speculate that she comes off quite Plutonic. She does trans-Pluto midpoint on the ascendant as well, and that is in a sextile to Pluto, so there's that. But I just kind of assumed that she's Plutonic, but I'm not really seeing the chart signatures to validate that. But that being said, her being a Plutonian, if we take that into account, her being unaware of herself or her motivations or actions, she would naturally be toxic because Plutonians are toxic normally. Or the association with Pluto and Scorpio is that they are the poison or the scorpion that stings, but the poison itself can be used as an antidote, or it can be used as something to actually engage war with or be a weapon of some sorts. So Plutonian that would naturally have some sort of issues with their self-identity, especially their motives in particular, would likely learn later in life of their toxic ways or some of their self-destructive ways, since we're talking about the 12th house. Ceres being this house would constitute that it'll be a delayed kind of realization with things that would be therapeutic to themselves and their own individual development. Other than that, let's see, the 5th house since Leo rising is the sign for that, she definitely looks like a Leo rising. I think she's got some dreads, but she's got, just from the thumbnail I've seen, she had quite exaggerated or healthy amounts of volume of hair, and she did have elongated, or her nose was more prominent feature on her face, which is a distinctive Leo signature. Not all Leo suns have that. A lot of Leo risings do. The fact that she's a Leo sun and a Leo rising would make sense with that. The elongated or emphasized nose is more apparent with male Leos as opposed to female Leos most of the time, though. So the fifth house has Neptune in there, and it's in a trine to her midhaven and Lilith. This person also has Lilith and Taurus as well. So that's another fascinating thing with that. I would assume, just because of the polarity formula with Lilith being in Taurus, the symptoms of that Taurus Lilith manifesting would be somebody drawn really dark Plutonian or Scorpio vibes, or Black Moon Lilith being in Scorpio, which is really, really dark associations with the psyche or people's dark side in general. So that would also make sense why she was drawn to me in general. Let's see. She does have Black Moon Lilith as well, Eris and the Moon, all in the 10th, all in the 9th house of the mind. And then obviously she has Pluto in her 3rd house as well. So she also has Jupiter in her 6th house in Aquarius. So that reemphasizes that she has abnormal mentality or normal ideations. And because they're squaring with Lilith and her North Node in the Moon, and then also squaring to the South Node and trine to Pluto, that would reemphasize that her abnormal ideations and beliefs would likely be reciprocated, there you go, through that Black Moon Lilith and Taurus in the 9th house. Other than that, is there any other distinctive similarities I can tell here? So she has an opposite North Node to Eustace, which is fascinating. It would be interesting to ask her more about kind of what she's been doing so far, life direction wise, and kind of compare and contrast about the polarity of that. There would be some similarities. There would be some similarities as well as some distinct differences. Oh, I have a new fan. Hey, thank you. Anyway, so now I'm going to go on to the next chart. So the next Leo chart we have is Toni. This person was born on August 2nd, 1949. So this is a generational gap, most definitely. The other people so far have been born in the Pluto Scorpio generation. And if I'm right, this will be the Pluto Leo generation. So this will be interesting just as an example with the Leo video theme going on. So they have a Virgo rising. And so that would indicate that their key planet is Mercury. They have Mercury in a stellium. That's, if there was a word for more than stellium, I think that this qualifies as that. They have Pallas, Mercury, Pluto, the Sun, Vulcan, Trans-Pluto, and Juno, all in Leo. And it all goes through the 11th house, and then Juno is the 10th house. So, the 11th house is with the trauma signature. So that would mean that logically, just the mental cognitive thought process, the self, and the way that the self evolves over time will feel very traumatic, intense, and sort of like extreme. It's the extreme is definitely the key phrase with this chart in general, just because of the elemental as well. So we have all those planets in Leo, and then also in the 7th house, we have the asteroid Hades, North Node, Black Moon Lilith, and Eris, all in Aries in the 7th house. And we have another person who has Neptune in the 1st house, and this one's closer to the ascendant, conjunct with the South Node. So this person may have some sort of intense connection to their soul or past lives, but they also would likely have some sort of dysphoria or fog of not actually knowing who they were or where they came from. So there's an emphasis of that as well, with the Earth symbol being in the fifth house itself. So that's obviously in opposition with all those planets in the 11th house. That's a trauma signature. So something to do with likely um, the instability overall with developing relationships, because there's a moon and Chiron placement in the second house of relationships. And then having all of those fire elements in the seventh house of others, it would indicate that there's some sort of lack of development from an authority figure with Saturn and Venus in the 12th house. There being some sort of inconsistent upbringing or environment in general for this individual during their developmental stages, that then caused them to project kind of chaotic instability. And it would be this chart is like an overdrive catalyst to the point where it's almost traumatizing or abusive to the person, their growth spurts and their phases. So that's pretty gnarly coming from somebody like me, who's Pluto conjunct Mercury and changes very, very frequently. This person, it's a very painful transition through everything that they do. Them having Ceres and Dia in the 12th house as well would indicate that finding ways to cope, specifically with any kind of mental frictions or mental disturbances, or just it would be manic more or less about their life, is going to be something delayed. That's something that they'll likely find some sort of remedy or solution for later. And yeah, Uranus being in the ninth house just reemphasizes the erratic mentality kind of trauma signature thing. So Pluto Leo generation as well, though, comes off that they're all about me, mine, and they are the most notorious generation to project their self in ideations that they keep to themselves. So naturally, this person being a Virgo rising, they're going to be reclusive and to themselves, having a feminine associated rising. But this person will be notorious for very blatant projection throughout the way they interact with people. My only advice and constructive kind of criticisms with that is that somebody who would be like that, I think it's a good way. It's a good to find a way to outlet that kind of ideations, because one way or another you're gonna let it out, either involuntarily or voluntarily. So journaling, if you're not willing to actually talk about it, or just opening up and trying to challenge yourself just a little bit to let some things out and vent. Because especially with the stellium in Leo and Pluto being a part of it, the projection will be very nasty. Very nasty. Especially with all the Aries influence in the seventh house of others. Definitely so. And they have a Scorpio moon too, which, Scorpio moon people are very intimidating individuals indeed. So let's go ahead and move on to Chris. We're back to the Scorpio Pluto generation. So this one's going to be August 17th, 1990. And so their rising is their Scorpio rising. So this person's a Plutonian. And they have Lilith in the first house, and it's in Sagittarius. So it's in the same sign that it is now. So this person's going to be a catalyst for using information as a weapon of sorts. And it's in opposition to Mars in the seventh house, meaning that he's likely to start a lot of confrontations and conflicts, particularly with things he says, things he believes, and the kind of, themes that he pushes throughout his self-expression. And without even intending to, this is a natural phenomenon for him. He has Pluto conjunct with Juno in the 12th house in Scorpio as well. So he does have some similarities with Eustace, who also is a Scorpio rising and does have Pluto in the 12th house. So again, this individual is going to be completely unaware of his gifts and abilities, or his capacity to psychologically manipulate people. Him having Chiron, Pallas, the moon, Jupiter, and Venus all in the ninth house of the mind and beliefs, would reemphasize that he's going to have very abnormal thoughts, ideations. He's going to develop all kinds of very obscure beliefs that are specifically tied to his Pluto uh, psychological diseases, and that it's going to directly impact his relationships with other people, and that this will be a vicious, lifelong cycle that he will have to break, and he will not break it until he becomes fully aware that this is actually what's happening. Similar kind of challenge for Eustace's chart as well. He has Mercury in the 11th house, a trauma signature in Virgo, so that's the sign that's in right now, actually, so it's a great time for hear this, just even if it's briefly touching on it. And it does sextile to that Chiron moon and Pallas, meaning that he has some sort of anxiety or mental trauma, or he's just very neurotic or manic, and that actually ties directly to the mental chaoticness that gone within him. He also has Uranus conjunct with Neptune, actually in the second house, the same as Eustace. That's kind of interesting. So he's got it in the same planets in the same house, both retrograde. And if I'm not right, yeah, Eustace actually has the moon in the 8th house and Venus in the 8th house. So this is a little bit more change to that. So what I know about Eustace is that he has trust issues, or he basically doesn't feel comfortable being genuine and open and express himself more or less with people, the way he feels and what he actually thinks of other people. So that sort of thing would be projected onto the 9th house of the mind or ideals of beliefs. So this Chris individual likely keeps a lot of these ideations to self. So a lot of the manic or erratic, neurotic kind of symptoms that arise from Mercury being in Virgo in the 11th house would be directly tied to him actually not finding a way to outlet that kind of manic ideations. Yeah, so I'll keep going on here. Then we have Sherrie, another Leo, born July 24th, 1963. So this is another generational difference. This is the only person that gave me a chart that was born in any time besides like August. Just interesting. So let's see. Leo rising. So that would mean that the sun is emphasized here. They have the sun at 0 degrees of Leo, and it's in the house, which is a trauma signature. It's in a stellium with Vulcan, Venus, and the North Node. Those 3 other planets are in Cancer, since 0 degrees of Leo is as close as it gets to not being a Leo at all. So the emphasis on some sort of eccentric, abnormal self-expression, and that would be emphasized with the Earth symbol being in polarity with the South Node in the 5th house of Self. And there is a square to Jupiter in the 8th house, meaning there's abnormal beliefs or abnormal perspectives about others and collectively, or about maybe pessimistic, dark things in general. And I just totally missed this for a second. I jumped away from the 1st house. They have Uranus, Pallas, Pluto, and the moon all in a stellium in Virgo in the 1st house. So naturally, this person is a Plutonian. And that would emphasize as to why their self-expression is more or less traumatizing to the collective in general. So we do have that stellium with Uranus, Pallas, Pluto, and the moon, and it's also Juno and Ceres and Mars. But that Ceres, Juno, the Ceres, Juno, and Mars extends to the 2nd house. Wow. I'm just overwhelmed by because that's really intense. It's Virgo season right now. Hey, how's it going? Just call me Robin. Okay. Hi, Robin. That's really intense, and I'm just projecting because I can't handle Virgo season at all, and I don't think I'd be able to make it. And I applaud you for your resilience to make it thus far, being born in 1960. Wow, that's just intense. So definitely the person to go to, especially if you're having a lot of manic or anxiety with the mutable years. Sherrie might be somebody to hit up that would be a kind of support pal for that. They do have Mercury in the 12th house here, so their mentality, the way that they express themselves or articulate themselves, is to be on the down low, on the hush, or they're not going to understand how to convey their ideas or their how to express themselves in general. There is a T square with this Mercury placement to Black Moon Lilith conjunct with Neptune, Scorpio in the 3rd house, and in opposition with the Hades signature as well as Hygeia. So something to do with them actually not articulating their ideations and venting would have something directly to do with some of the nervous, restless, it's just overactive nervous system anxiety. She needs a Xanax kind of person. It's similar issues to what Chris actually would be likely dealing with as well. The opposition, there's Chiron there in the 7th house. It's not directly near the descendant, which is your weakness point or your symptoms on a medical astrology level, but it is still in the 11th house there. And so in Pisces too, so that's actually the sign that Chiron is in right now. So people being completely unaware or lacking any kind of objectivity about their self-destructive behavior, specifically mentally, would be something that would be in here. There's a grand trine to Chiron from that Black Moon Lilith and Neptune in the 3rd house to the Venus North Node and Vulcan stellium there. That would emphasize that once this person actually works through a very intense dynamic they have going on here, that they would definitely be some sort of therapeutic support system, as I was saying, and some sort of advocate for mental healing or therapy in general. So I would assume, I don't know anything about Sherrie, but if she hasn't gone that direction already, kind of dealing with, social work or therapy, that's definitely something that she would be a natural gift at. Having a North Node in Cancer as well, you strive to be nurtured or give nurturing kind of support to other people, conjunct with the Venus in the 11th house there. So then we move on to person's name I can't say. Thyatira, Thyatira. It's obviously a fake Facebook name, but anyway. This person was born the 6th of August, 1992. So we're back to the same Pluto-Scorpio generation that we've been for most of these charts. And they have an Aquarius rising, and they have the Earth symbol, Saturn, and Black Moon Lilith all in a stellium on the ascendant. And it's in opposition with Chiron, the Sun, Trans-Pluto, Vulcan, Venus, and Jupiter. Most of those are in Leo. Some of them stretch into Virgo towards the end there. So that would emphasize that let's see, what is us squaring that? Pluto being in the house of the mind would essentially make them naturally Plutonic, and their very dark or warped mentality or just perspective in general is likely going to come off traumatizing to other people or specifically very offensive and vulgar with their self-expression. They also have a signature that may give them a challenge of narcissistic habitual behavior or tendencies. I'm not saying that this person's a narcissist in general, but when there's Sun conjunct Chiron, and it's in Leo no less on the descendant line, and it has some stressful aspects as it does, there is a possibility to develop narcissistic tendencies. So just keep that in mind. The 10th house there has a moon in Sagittarius. That's the same moon sign as mine, as well as Sagittarius Palace. So they're definitely going to be intense. And even think of Donald Trump has a Sagittarius moon as well. So over-exaggerated, off the charts, that sort of thing. Having Palace in the same house as well would mean that that's the kind of persona he's going to give off collectively or for his reputation. And it having some stressful aspects to Mars, opposition Mars actually. And then adding some squares. It's actually in a T square to Saturn and Lilith and his Sun and Chiron in the 7th house of others. that would emphasize that he's just too overwhelming or too intense for people, which likely causes people to feel traumatized or unsure, insecure, or intimidated by his self-expression or presence. He has Ceres again in the 12th house. There's a couple of other charts that I've mentioned previously that have Ceres as well in the 12th house. This one's in Aquarius, so the inability to flesh out their ideas or express themselves or sort of encouragement or praise would likely be the issues that would arise with Ceres being in Aquarius in the 12th house. The 12th house has that delayed effect where they wouldn't be aware that that's a remedy that they need to rectify. They do have Uranus as well as Neptune conjunct in this house as well, in the same sign, Capricorn, as Eustace and that Maya person, I believe, and I think another person as well, Chris. So I'm seeing this continuing trend here, and this would have a lot to do with Neptune is associated with spirituality or collective beliefs or even occultism to an extent. The more happy, like new age kind of occult ideations as opposed to the Plutonic side, perhaps. There being a conjunction with Uranus to Neptune would emphasize that this person has an eccentric or a very obscure approach or mentality to occultism or spirituality. That's the one thing that all of these charts that I mentioned with this connection to Uranus and Neptune have in common. Let's see. This person also has node in the 11th house, meaning that their associated life purpose is going to be evolving or revolving around trauma or some sort of traumatizing thing in a sociological way. Regardless if this person is a catalyst to cause trauma or if they're an actual lead is yet to be determined. And just because free will is still at play here for everyone in life, there is the choice to be constructive or destructive. I find it fascinating that Eustace as well as Jordan were born on the exact same day, August 14th. The difference is obviously generational influences. So Jordan was born in 1981. And they were actually born almost around the time frame. So Eustace was 2:26 p.m. and Jordan is 2:05 p.m. So they actually have the same rising sign as well. And this is a great example as to why generational planets, which is something that's very misunderstood in astrology, especially modern astrology today, and obviously I would assume medieval astrology too, because they didn't use these planets, that people don't actually understand the implications or the intense kind of influences that they do have on an individual. A lot of the outer planets, which would be anything past Saturn, so Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, those are all attributed towards generational things or mundane astrology, predicting events. And a lot of people gloss over those when they're talking about an individual, and that's definitely something that should be highlighted. It's basically counterproductive to actually understand the self and its entire dynamic. So this person's a Scorpio rising. They have, let's see, Pluto. So Pluto's going to be their key planet. They have Pluto in Libra because they're obviously a different generation. They have it conjunct with Jupiter and Saturn, and they have it in the 11th house of trauma. So Pluto and it being in the house of trauma would obviously indicate that he's a Plutonian and he has a trauma signature. The emphasis of this being conjunct with Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio in his 12th house means that a lot of the trauma that does occur throughout this individual's life is self-imposed or self-inflicted. Because Neptune is in the first house, it's not near the ascendant, but it's in the first house, would emphasize that there's some sort of disillusionment or some sort of facade or a lack of clarity with the individual and the individual's behavior in general. It being in a trine to the sun, since we're talking about the sun signs, Leo, and it's in a stellium with Pallas, Trans-Pluto, the Sun, Vulcan, and Mercury all in there, and the North Node's in that house. This is the 9th house of the mind. That they're unaware of how they express themselves may come off as traumatizing or uncomfortable for other people. They're unaware that the way that they articulate themselves, discuss ideas, or the ideations that they have are actually not saying abusive, but uh, just traumatizing and disheartening or uncomfortable to other people. So the problem that always arises with people like this is that they're unaware that they actually are projecting toxic kind of personas or behavior naturally. And because they lack self-awareness and objectivity, they then start to look at the rest of the world like, what does everybody mean to me? And being a Leo sun, the whole emphasis of me would be reiterated. So Pluto being conjunct with Jupiter in the 11th house of sociological associations would be the outer look of his social media. I know through social media is why I reference that. Or his friends, organizations, or institutions rejecting him or looking at him as a potential toxic seed, and him just seeing that as the rest of the world is unfair and unjust to me, and that is definitely Pluto and Libra to a T with that as well. So until he's well aware of the Black Moon Lilith conjunct with Uranus in his 12th house, just as I reiterated with that Chris guy as well as Eustace, that until they're aware and they have objectivity with some of the potential toxic associations with them being a Plutonian archetype, they will look at everything like a six sad world kind of association, and they will not be aware of the origin of the problem, which the origin of the problem itself, because Leo is a masculine sign, a fire sign. They're intuitive, they're proactive, and they're the type that initiate action, initiate dialogue, initiate associations. So it's usually when a Leo just waltzes into a room, and even if he has yet to say anything to anyone, the way that he carried himself and waltzed into the room and walks in expecting everybody to drop everything they're doing and look at him, that kind of vibe, that energy, that mentality comes off of his body language, comes off of the way he interacts and actually approaches everyone. And depending on if it's warranted or if it's just making people feel uncomfortable, if it's more of a condescending instead of just a prideful thing, it can obviously have volatile or very nasty, vulgar responses or reactions to that. And if they're unaware of that, on top of them coming in acting like the sun shines out their ass, literally, that's what Leos are known for, that they start talking like that too, and they start talking like they're above everyone, that's instantly going to cause everybody to completely, rid you. And that is a very, very, I guess, sad reality with some Leos that do have some sort of dysphoria or lack of awareness of self. So I just wanted to reemphasize too, between Eustace and Jordan. I'm going to actually pull up a bi-wheel. Let's see. Do I use... Oh, I need to use both equal. Lascivious, equal. Oh, here we go. Second, guys, sorry. There's that. No. Equal, equal. Okay. So fascinating. So we do both of these individuals actually have Jupiter in Libra in the 11th house. Eustace has it conjunct with Mars, and Jordan has it conjunct with Saturn. So the one on one hand, they're both going to be having some sort of malefic associations with collective groups or organizations, meaning that they might actually be some sort of sabotaging mechanism, double agent, or sort of uh, rotten seed in the actual garden that's sown, more or less. Not saying that they could be something of that constructive or positive, but that naturally they're going to steer away from what ideally were delegated to do, more or less, or they're going to be abusing what good fortune they get through sociological means. So that doesn't always mean that it's something evil or bad. That could constitute them sabotaging some sort of collective organization or groups or associations of that nature. Let's see. The difference between these two, Jordan obviously has Pluto in the 11th house and Eustace doesn't. Psychological defenses and the psyche in general is directly associated with Pluto. So the psychological defenses of the poor, sick, sad world, me sort of associations with Jordan that Jordan may have would be attributed specifically because Pluto is in that 11th house, trauma signature, and Pluto's naturally toxic or, in general like that, besides the psychological defense associations. Eustace has Pluto in the 12th house, and it's in between actually the Black Lilith and the Uranus for Jordan. So in the difference between the Pluto placements here is that Eustace is unaware of his toxic or potential toxic associations, and all Jordan, because he has Neptune on the in the first house, he is unaware of his own behavior. He's aware of the toxic associations with his sociological relationships. He just is unaware of the actual origin of the problem. Eustace, he's completely unaware of his psychological defenses and his psyche, just stability overall in its mechanisms in general. So I honestly don't know which is actually better or worse with that, to be honest. They're both definitely very challenging. They both have Eris in Aries in the 5th house, meaning that their self-expression or identity is naturally going to be robust, and they're going to intentionally invoke controversy through their self-expression. And let's see, they both have the Mercury in the 9th house as well. So abnormal ideations and mentality. They both still have the Sun as well as trans Pluto in a stellium Leo as well. And the other major difference we have is that Jordan has his North Node in Leo in the 9th house, meaning that he is supposed to contribute some sort of essentially he's supposed to make a life example more or less of himself, about how he is associated with the collective and how the sensibilities of the balance between the sociological factors as well as the individual factors are very important to understand for there to be peace in general and there to be some sort of prosperity with the self-expression. Just from personal things, and I know he's not necessarily going to be upset if I kind of tell details about that. He's got an Aquarius moon, and yeah, so it's in opposition with that Leo stellium naturally, so he is very eccentric, and he wants to be talked about in general, so I'm sure he'll be offended if I disclose anything. But him being kind of associated with something that would be stifling self-expression, like the Antifa movement, is actually completely contradicting and sabotaging what his actual intended sole purpose is in this life. He's supposed to embrace diversity, and he's supposed to emphasize on how people should be accepted for their individual perspectives, their ideologies, and he was naturally from the get-go, from the times I've known him, on that kind of track, especially with him being in the LHP community. But somewhere along the line, I'm assuming likely with Neptune and Pisces, he's been steered away from his actual intended purpose, which would likely result in him feeling like he's at a loss, or he feels like his life has no intended meaning or direction, which is, I believe, something that he's been kind of dealing with, at least having those thoughts here and there recently. And probably it's been progressively worse over time. So specifically for Jordan as well, he has, he's got Chiron in his 6th house, so his daily life is, his ability in daily life is essentially part of the issue of why he doesn't actually figure out how to make himself feel less erratic and manic, because having an Aquarius moon is definitely associated with manic and erratic behavior. him having the psychological development planet Pluto in the 11th house, of trauma signature being conjunct with, which exacerbates things, and then being conjunct to malefic just reemphasizes that there's some sort of psychological trauma going on with him in particular. So until he actually finds some sort of stable, grounded, day-to-day routine for himself, where he feels structured, safe in general, he will not fully progress past a lot of this neurotic mentality or tendencies or episodes that he may experience. So other than that, between the two of them here, both being Plutonians, they both potentially have toxic signatures, specifically Scorpio. And although the planets, they associate in similar ways. And another emphasized thing I always like to stress with people is that the sign in which a planet is in does not actually take priority or precedence over the placement of said planets. Each planet is associated with themes, has some sort of influences, sociologically, mentally, physically, spiritually, collectively, regardless if you're looking at medieval equal house charts or you're looking at Placidius, etc., or solar charts. They all have their own distinct function and purpose, just like every single component to a machine has its distinct characteristics and the function in which it has to essentially complete. So the correlations between planets being in the same house, especially since they're both Scorpio rising, is takes more precedence than the signs that they're in. So I just like to reemphasize that that's why there's a lot of commonality between the way they project themselves in a sociological influence, because they both Jupiter and Libra, and they're both in the 11th house. Them having both Scorpio rising, as well as they both have the Hades signature in the 7th house in Gemini, meaning that some of their vices or their sin kind of dark sides of their chart are going to have a Jekyll and Hyde sort of association where they can turn it on and turn it off at a moment's notice, and some people will know about it and some people won't. And they will say the likely Leos in general like to boast how great and righteous and everything they are and how amazing they are. And with that kind of association, it would be them likely counter-projecting or projecting some sort of lack thereof at some other in their life. And that could be because of just straight out fabricated kind of projections, and or it might be because they're actually hiding some sort of deviant, abusive tendencies. The only factor here is that Eustace being unaware of his Pluto in his 12th house, if he did have any kind of habitual, cycles of abusive tendencies towards other people, it was completely unintentional and he's unaware of it. The other factor with Jordan is that since he doesn't have Pluto in the 12th house, he's actually fully aware of when he has been abusive, if he has been abusive throughout his habitual cycles with that. Transits would likely trigger those sort of things. It wouldn't be an ongoing life cycle. Other than that, I think I'm going to go. See if there's any commenters that want to ask questions about Leos. There's probably not a chance that there's some in here, right? Yes, no. It's quite a bit of people. Thank you for watching. It was awesome. This is the most of an audience I've had in a while. And thank you for anybody who became a fan, and apologize, I guess, now to everybody on my Facebook that's probably been waiting for the link to this live stream, because I totally didn't link it. And so hopefully maybe social media and Mercury retrograde didn't sabotage it and it linked it for me. But I also expect a lot of people to be up at 1:55 in the morning. Granted, I am on the West Coast, but there's that. So that is the Leo season video. And thank you for watching. And we'll be taking volunteers for the Virgo season here shortly. And I will be finding a better method to write down all the birth data, because I'm tired of going back through social media screen caps and trying to dig them all out. If I did forget anyone or lose his chart in the time when I was collecting them for tonight's video, I apologize. All right, and anybody interested in a private consultation, reading, or chart reports, I can do instant PDF reports. Those are $40. I can do a printed one, just add an additional $10 plus shipping. And then I can also do personal private consultations, diagnostic work, as well as astropsychological therapy sessions for anybody interested in that. You can just contact me here. Go find Chaos Astrology on Facebook, also my YouTube. And if you just Google hashtag Plutonian Confessions or just Ray Reinhardt's, you'll find all of my social media links on there as well. And you can just email me at rayreinhardts@gmail.com for inquiries about scheduling a consultation. All right, see you guys.